Microbes are, and it's the way CDO was defining microbes in 1878. He was a doctor, okay, a military doctor. He was defining them as invisible life. And for me, it's only a size issue. Microbes are small organisms that you cannot see if you don't have a microscope. And it encompasses a huge phylogenetic diversity of things that started to diversify well before the multicellular organism. So not only it's highly diverse, but also it's small, so it can be everywhere without you to see it. And nowadays there is this view that everything is embedded in tons of microbes, which we called microbiota. I like to go back to the definition by the guy who created the word, Haeckel, in the 19th century, was establishing this as the way organisms are using their living environments. To update it a bit, it's the relationship between living organisms that are together living together, and their relationship also to the abiotic physico-chemical environment. Nowadays, having the idea that microbiota are everywhere, for example on our skin, on our gut, having this idea that microbiota are everywhere, it turns out ecology to be mainly the relationship between microbes and between multicellular organisms and microbes. It turns out to be now a major issue in ecology. Yes, the gut microbiota have been dissimulating a bit the rest of the microbiota. And the fact is that if you look at a plant, for example, there are microbes everywhere, especially because cells in plants have a cell wall with small holes between the cell walls of the different neighboring cells where microbes can enter. Think, for example, that in a leaf, in 1 gram of leaf, you have 100 million of bacteria. So it's really everywhere in the plant. For example, the roots of the plants, they really need colonization by fungi to be able to exploit the soil. So from head to toe, the plant is having a microbiota. And if you shift to animals, then the colonization is a bit different. It's not between each cells. It's on the surface and in the wall, in the cracks of the animal. It's not going within the tissues, but still it's there. For example, if you take human, I have a slide here which is nice for that. You can see that we have microbiota on the skin, of course, and it's like 1,000 billions of bacteria. You have them also on the head, and you have even some photosynthetic bacteria there, funny. You have, of course, in the mouth, the esophagus, the intestine, we know that. We also have it in the vagina for the ladies, where it's very important for the functions and the equilibrium of this organ. So it's in every holes, every surface of animals. But be you a plant or an animal, you are filled with microbes, and the number of those microbes is the same magnitude order than the one of our cell number. It's 10,000 milliards of human cells for 10,000 milliards of bacteria. So we have some experimental data on this, even on humans. When you take antibiotics, you are killing a lot of your gut microbiota, and it results in huge change in gene expression in the intestinal cells. You are more prone to diarrhea, you have some less resilient community in the gut. So we know that there is some dysfunctioning when there is punctual disturbance, but there is more. Due to hygiene, we now in Europe and in America, in westernized countries, have much less diverse microbiota. And it turns out that this is an explanation to those illnesses which are arising in the modernity, like asthmatic problems, like autoimmune problems, like even autism. Those problems, which are now rising fast, because over 10 years we have 3 times more autism, for example, those problems which will be, for example, problem in 10 years, we think that 1 European out of 2 will have such a modern problem, which did not exist so much in the 19th century. And we know now that within the complex determinism of this complex illness, I don't say it's so simple, one of the issues is the fact that we don't have a sufficiently diverse microbiota, especially when we are young and grow and establish our immune system, nervous system, and so on, because microbiota, human microbiota, is helping to establish a normal development in the youth. So we see what happens when there is a disturbance of those microbiota. There is a disturbance of us, because in a way, our functioning and health is the result of a microbial ecosystem in part. We are, in a way, an ecosystemic service of a microbial ecosystem. And when this ecosystem is disturbed, we are disturbed as a result of that, because the service is not brought anymore. I think it's a delicate question, because in ecology we have this idea of equilibrium. For example, we discussed the concept of resilience, which is going back to the previous step. And behind there is the idea that the previous step was an equilibrium. But be careful that in ecology there is no equilibrium. Everything is changing, because there is evolution in ecological systems as well. Everything can be modified, everything can be changed. And we just discussed that the fact that, for example, our gut ecosystem was recently, by way of the westernization of our way of living, modified. I think that the most important is to conceive the equilibrium in ecology not as something which is fixed and stable, because, by the way, it can be destabilized, but exactly as your equilibrium when you are biking. When you are biking, you are not in equilibrium in this sense that you will not fall. Believe me, you can fall when you bike, but you rectify and you have a kind of dynamic equilibrium. And the equilibrium of a microbiota will be exactly the same as any equilibrium in ecology. It will be fluctuations around a state which you wish to have, because it gives the best ecological services, it gives the best health in the case of the microbiota. So what we have to learn is not to think of a perfect state which would not change, but how to organize fluctuations within a range which is fitting our expectations in terms of goal, for example, for human or animal health.